Hey people, Espen Kraft here, and that guy on this cover, that is Green from Scritti Politti, one of my all-time favorite bands, and this issue is from July 1988. A very hot July here in Norway in more ways than I'll go into here. But turn the page over and we'll get to the D50 from Roland. I just made a video on the D50 and the D50 stays strong today. And the ad says tomorrow's legend, and it became that, a true legendary synth, and I love it to this day. So it's nice to see that on the page 2 in this magazine. Roland always had great ads, in my opinion. We have some more ads here for different synths, and the editorial, or is it the guest editorial, The Shape of Things to Come, and the big complaint back then was that music had become too mechanical. So sequencers and stuff like that was pretty much frowned upon by many. I'll get to that later in the issue. And we have the contents of this issue, and there's a lot of cool stuff in this issue actually. I will get to those. Holly Johnson greets us up there with a big frown from Relax. Frankie Goes to Hollywood was still going strong at that time, although on the decline perhaps in terms of famousness, I don't know. More ads, and Sonic, EPS, SQ80, Kurzweil. Check out the guy at the top left on the page there. This time played again with balls, he says, and it's not much clothing underneath that jacket he has. Well, moving on. Interface was, well, sort of reviewers could write in stuff. We have more ads. The Ultimate Apex column stand, I have one of those. Not a vintage one, but the technology hasn't changed much in the column stands. Future Music, I know a lot of you guys remember Future Music, even we here in Norway traveled to England once in a while to get some stuff. And the Roland samplers, S330 I can see there. The MC300 and 500 sequencers. Fantastic products coming soon. And more letters. Mechanical Performance, I see, one of the headlines there. And I never get tired of seeing the old Mac classics, where the screen and the core unit is built into one chassis. The Clava D-Drum 2, anyone remembers those? I never laid my hands on any of these, actually. I've used a lot of other Simmons stuff, but not that one. And Fostex was still going strong, of course, in the late 80s with their 8-track tape recorders. More of the D-Drum 2 and more ads. Yamaha DX7S. That was the last of the DXs. I have that. And software editors for the Atari. Here's the GeneWave or GenWave -12, a sample waveform editor for the Korg DSM-1 and Prophet 2000, among other samplers. There's a lot to be had by using sample editors from a computer over to the sampler itself in terms of vintage samplers. Playing the blues, pop stars on the Pete Wattman label. Stockake and Wattman was very successful, and they signed up a lot of bands that came under their umbrella. And I can't say that Blue Mercedes is one of their most talked about acts, but at this time they are thinking they're going to make it big with Stockake and Wattman. And they talk a lot of their equipment, the gear they use, and one of these guys says he has 5 Super Jupiters, the MKS-80. That's not bad. Ah, a great ad for Akai. That's Greg Fillinganes in the middle there. And the X7000 sampler, my first sampler, and they have the MPC-60. and a lot of other cool stuff from Akai. It was always easy to spot the Akais because of the white colors they used, the color scheme, and they really made a genius stroke with that white color. Back to Blue Mercedes. What more? They're using Akai S900s, Juno 60s, TB303s. Cool stuff. Great article on bass and bass frequencies and how to equalize it, record it, etc. And some effects units from Vesta Fire. Me and Anders Jensen actually Googled that the other day on eBay, or we eBayed it to see if there was any of these units in circulation, and we found one actually for sale. I never used those. Can't talk much about how I feel about it. Final takes, demo takes, and live takes. And pay attention to the corner left here, George Michael at Earl's Court in concert. And the reviewer here, the journalist, he is not pleased about the fact that George Michael was using a couple of keyboardists that used sequencers during the live performance. He says that's just as bad as using tape recorders for backing tracks, and he wouldn't think George Michael was one of the guys to use that. But he says it was a good concert nonetheless. David Thorne worked for David Sylvain. I was never into either of those. I can't say much about it, but I can say something about this Alesis HR16 drum machine. I hope to do a video on that one day. A great drum machine, and with the Alesis MMT8 sequencer, it was a great combo. So I'll get back to that later. The David Thorne article. Actually, it says that the David Sylvain live gig consists of live looping, and that was cool. A demo studio, the production workshop. Let's see what he's got in there. That is a demo studio of some kind. Looks like it's in a basement. Don't know if it's in London, but we can see an Emax, a big format mixer, tape recorder, a DX7, of course. That's the Emax right there. A little bit of a Juno 106. And what else? Get to that in a minute. Sound technology, PLC, the Oberha Matrix 1000, some Ataris. And back to the demo studio. He has a lot of cool stuff actually. That was a pretty nice demo studio. Casio CZ101, the Akai S900 and the Patch Bay, a Roland JX3P and another DX7. Cool stuff. And we have patchwork, that's right. A patch for the Roland D50, Ebony Whistler, the Yamaha DX21. And the guy has made some drum sets for the HR16 from Alesis. I'll have to try that one day. And here we have the main feature of this magazine, and the one I've read many times. This is on Scritti Politti and how they made their famous songs. Songs from the classic album Cupid and Psyche 85, a fantastic album. And those guys were pioneers in terms of MIDI syncing and MIDI sequencing and just bringing it all together at the time where this was almost a black art. And I can't praise those guys enough. And Green is a great singer. He's still singing live using the same type of voice he had back then. He's always in tune, in pitch, perfect pitch. And Dave Gamson, his main keyboard guy, he goes through the gear he used and uses at this time for their music. And this is high class. Super Jupiters, Prophet 2000, Prophet VS, Minimoog, Matrix 12s, and Claviers, Fairlights, everything. And the way they used it together, just Google that and listen to their music. Awesome stuff, awesome stuff. And this issue you can read for yourself online at Museums. I'll link to that in the video description. And we have the M1, of course. Here's a review of that. The M1 had just hit the world, and this is a true legend of its own. The first workstation in many ways. Great effects, great drums, a sequencer built in. The sequencer was, in hindsight, probably not as good, but it did the job. And the verdict here goes something like that as well. Praises throughout, except for the sequencer. And I know a lot of guys use these synths, this M1 on gigs, live gigs, using the sequencer. A radio jingle studio, is that it? I remember those in Norway as well. Small studios devoted to or dedicated to making radio jingles. And here we have Steinberg Pro 24-3, the software sequencer for the Atari ST platform. And this was probably the last revision before they turned into Cubase. And it's kind of odd not seeing the linear timeline in this screen grab, but maybe I'll make a review of this myself one day because I have the Pro 24 for my Atari. The Secrets of Timbre, a little cool article. What else? Home and studio recording, today's magazine for today's recordists. More ads. And another software, the Pro MIDI Studio system. I never used that. I have no idea if that was a good software or not. If you have experiences with this, please say so in the comment section. Let us know. Linux, the stereo sampling system. I always saw that, never tried it. Dr. T was big, of course, in the 80s. They had lots of programs. This is editor for the Yamaha FB01. A cool little FM box. And Cottage Audio, Thatched. Is that in reference to Margaret Thatcher? Don't know. Sell it for nothing. And here we have the ads, and I've shown you some of these before. I'll make a scan of these pages and put them in the video description. What do we have? Well, I can see a Roland Jupiter 8 with JSQ60 sequencer and case in mint condition going for £950 in 1988. A scoop for whatever guy who bought that. You can see a lot of Korg monopolys going for as low as £135. A lot of monopolys actually. And Jupiter 6, we have the Oscar programmable synth. Immaculate condition going for £255. Minimoogs we can see, Casios. And, oh well, what we have here, a Yamaha CS80, excellent condition. Want to trade it for Yamaha KX88 or KX76 master keyboard, that is insane. A Yamaha CS80 being traded for a Yamaha KX88 master keyboard. Sequential Prophet 5 revision 3 going for £600 and the Pro 1 going for a little over £100. Oh my, that's all I can say. Coming towards the end here, the British Music Fair, Wembley Exhibition Centre 88. Anyone went there? Please say so. And an ad for the Korg M1 music workstation, of course, at the end of this issue. Well, that was fun. I hope you enjoy this 15 minutes with me going through this issue from July 88, Music Technology. A very hot 88, and I might elaborate on that on another video. But for now, I'm Espen Kraft, I am the 80s. Thank you for watching and stay tuned.